Hello, everybody. We are going to share our stream because we're only streaming to our page, Duncan page, and the YouTube channel. Yeah,
Okay.
we don't have our usual way of being able to share it everywhere. Hang on one second.
I was like, ma'am.
Right. Let me share this in our group. If you guys don't know, we have a group now called Duncan Religion, where we talk about and debate religion and all kind of stuff, really.
Yeah, we just, or well, I just because it's quarantine time, I have found some interesting political debates online, and I have been coming.
Right.
I have been coming closer to the grave with it.
Yeah, for some reason I can't really hear you that well.
Oh shit!
Is it me? It might be
I don't
me.
know. I think that might.
Does this matter?
No.
It might be me. It's always me. Is there a volume thing on here?
Can you hear it now?
Okay. Oh, I can hear you a lot better. It's definitely me.
Okay.
Okay, like you screaming now in my thing. Hang on. So hello everybody. We are talking about. Could you tell us what the acronym is for, or what it means?
Yeah. So we're talking about GRSM history and rights, and the acronym stands for Gender, Romantic, and Sexual Minorities. And I believe it was actually coined by Jimmy Snow. And if you don't know him, he's an atheist, secular humanist activist for just human rights in general. And he identifies as pansexual, so he had a vested interest, of course, in representing the community in a good way. And he was like, well, I do get your frustration about, LGBTQIA plus with all the letters. And, he was like, well, that's still not totally inclusive, because what about demisexuals? What about polysexuals and pansexuals and all the in-between identities? So he was like, okay, GRSM, it involves everyone. And I just love the expression or the acronym because it really engulfs the entire spectrum. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Because I like that acronym. If I can just say this, as a cis woman, that's what you told me. Cis woman. Because LGBTQ and all of that, it just gets longer and longer. It's harder to remember.
Yeah. Plus, it's it's never gonna involve the in between categories like polysexual, like demisexual, which is some people try to erase those identities. And I'm an asexual, so girl, tell me about that identity being erased and shit.
Right.
So I'm just like, okay, that actually sounds better, because some people are saying like A stands for ally, and I'm just like, bitch, if you don't shut the fuck up.
Right. Trying to hijack my identity, huh? Well, and I'm pretty sure that came from a cis person saying it stands for ally. I cannot
Definitely.
imagine.
And well, I wouldn't be a good skeptic if I wouldn't say this, but yeah, there is toxicity in the queer or GRSM community. Casual racism is one of the toxic traits, especially by cis white gays, and I think that definitely needs to be called out. And bi and pansexual and asexual erasure is also a thing that's very prevalent. Like they say, you can pass as straight, so you don't get the struggle. And then these three identities, like the pan, the bi, and the ace people, are just here like, well, I might look straight, but I definitely am not.
Right.
So stop erasing my identity just on the merit that I might end up in a heterosexual looking relationship.
Can I, well, I don't even know. I feel out of place even saying this, but just on my travels online, um,
Yeah.
lesbians say that they feel like they are being erased because of trans women who identify or who are lesbian, who say that they are lesbian. Is that a thing?
Uh, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, trans people can be asexual, pansexual, bisexual, straight, gay. They can be all sorts of identities themselves. Just because they are not cisgendered, they can still have these various identities, just like cisgendered people can. So I definitely see why transgender identities can be hard to to understand in general, because you don't necessarily get the feeling that goes into it. Like, I am not cisgendered, but I don't have dysphoria, or not to my knowledge. I just don't feel like I am dysphoric about having the female body parts. And I always joke about, like, if I woke up with a dick tomorrow, I would be like, oh, okay,
There,
this
that's
is
what's happening.
this is my life now. Swimming
Right.
with a dick. Okay, that's cool, I guess, or whatever. I'm gonna go and pee my name in the snow or something.
You're so funny. So we guys, we have a you actually have a presentation that you got together
Yeah,
to kind of go over some history for
I
people
love this
like
flag.
me. Oh, me too. This is well, actually you're gonna talk about flags and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, in a second, or
Okay.
well, more than a second, but
All right. So you just tell me when to click, honey.
yeah. Let's go to
The first slide.
per, the first amazing person, who is
Okay.
Henry Christian Gerber, and he served in the U.S. Army during the First World War. And, well, as you could guess, he lived in Europe while that was happening in Germany. And when he was in Germany, he witnessed a large organized movement of homosexuals, uh, you know, picketing, protesting, lobbying for equal representation and secure civil rights. And when he returned from the war, that inspired him so much, and he felt such a sense of duty to his community, that when he returned home to Chicago, he started a similar thing in the US. And he is the first one to rally a bunch of people around this cause that I could find documentations of, which is, to me, is mind blowing, and is amazing to know that this person was like there. And that Stonewall was not the beginning of this story, even though Stonewall was the first big global media thing that happened. And the next person we have is Alan Turing, who was the information technician who broke the Enigma code and developed the basic technological features and, you know, tech technical parameters that we use in modern phones, computers, and tablets and all that, honey. Like, these microchip things, they wouldn't be possible without his
Wow.
his incredible mind. And I'm just like, okay, y'all best put respect on gay people now, using your tablets
Right.
out there. And when he was 39, he started a relationship with with another man because he was gay, and their home was burgled. So they called the police, and obviously the police took the witness testimonies, and they realized, oh shit, they're gay. So they were convicted,
Hmm.
and Turing actually pleaded guilty. He was granted probation on condition to him undergoing chemical castration, which basically meant that he was injected with a bunch of female hormones, and he was injected with a bunch of other, harmful chemicals, and basically uh, to kill his libido. And as you could guess, any normal person would be kind of depressed if their uh, an important part of your identity is how you relate to sex and others,
Right.
obviously. So he was very depressed, and in 54 1954, on June 8th, he was found dead, and the investigation confirmed that it was suicide, unfortunately.
All right. And
Yep, the next person and object that we have here is Gilbert Baker, who created the first pride flag that's currently held in Smithsonian. The flag had 8 colors: hot pink, symbolizing sexuality; red, symbolizing healing, no, life; orange, symbolizing healing; sun is symbolized by yellow; nature by green; art by blue; harmony by indigo; and the spirit of queer people by violet. And because it was the 1900s, and I believe it was around the time of the Depression, though I'm not certain, the hot pink and the indigo needed to be taken out, and that's how we were left with the current pride flag, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And next up we have, hang on, William Dorsey Swan, who was just referred to among his friends as the Queen. He was born a slave, and he started this underground
Molly, did we lose you? Looks like we may have lost Molly. She should come back pretty soon. I think this is very fascinating that a slave, African American slave, was actually is here. Look like dressed here in like drag or something. Here we go. Girl, don't make me do this
Girl,
by myself.
I'm sorry, my fault.
I don't know nothing I'm talking about.
It's my
I
phone. I'm sorry.
no, as you was going, when you left, I said I thought this was really interesting. I mean, I remember when you pulled this picture, like you was just like so fascinated that a African American
Yeah,
slave.
so he was referred to as the Queen because obviously he was a drag queen, and basically he led this underground drag race, drag ball kind of event, and in 1896 him and fellow drag queens were convicted for keeping a disorder. It was called for "you gay, so you're going to prison." And I found this story, when I was preparing for the glass table.
pride show, and I was like, I knew that the queer experience and the queer culture is very black and very brown, but I did not know that it was this rooted in that culture, going this back into like the slavery times. And well, first of all, I'm white, so to me it's mind-boggling how long all that took for the US to figure it out, especially because in Europe it was not a thing to have slavery since like the Middle Ages. And but basically these these events after his arrest became very big and very popular, and his brother took over, and he was called the Mother. And this is where the expression mother and father come from in the drag race culture and in ballroom culture when you're part of a house. So that
Okay.
is
I learned that from Pose.
to me just a mind-blowingly beautiful. Yeah, exactly. And I think Paul does a very great job representing how he also run this shit. Okay, like if you mingle in GRSM communities and you're still racist, what are you doing? Hi, how are you? You're sleeping on the history of your ancestors and your predecessors. So that's just a crazy thing to me. And then obviously the next next big thing is Stonewall. And this event is often cited as the one that catalyzed the gay rights movement, and it happened in June 1969 in New York City. And it was early morning of June 28th when the police raided a popular gathering place for young gay men, lesbians, and bisexuals and transgender people. The employees were selling alcohol without license and roughing up many of the patrons for not paying protection money. And basically, the gay people present were just harassed and being roughed up by the cops. So people started, well, smashing shit and fighting back. And about 400 people were arrested that night. We have some pictures on the next slide. If, yeah. So that's on the left, no, right bottom corner is Marsha P. Johnson and some protesters, and the other pictures show the actual riots. Some grabs I found from the riots. So you can see the police just grabbing people and beating them with the batons and stuff for, to me, no apparent and good reason. But what do I know? I'm just a lone gay. Hi, how are you? And then
You're
we
so
have
funny.
on the next slide, one of the activists was there, so, a white father and an African American mother in 1920, and she and Marsha P. Johnson and those activists in Stonewall, obviously, they were arrested, and they organized the first Pride event in 1970. So that was the first event after, when they were let out from Stonewall, they started organizing it at Stonewall. And, onlookers claimed that she was the first one to throw the rocks. Others claimed that it was Marsha P. Johnson, but I don't think we will ever really know. But basically, she is cited as, she went like seeing red, screaming at the crowds, "Why don't you do something?" as they were being beaten up and dragged around by the police. And she was a drag performer. She she led in, this gender fluid way of dressing in suits and in basically, a drag king style, like, looking like a man, but still being quite feminine. And she has this quote that says, "It was a rebellion. It was an uprising. It was a civil rights disagreement. There was no damn riot." And I always quote Stonewall when when in the current state of things, which I guess we all know what that is about.
Well, I
In
think it's interesting. I
the
think
current
it's
state of
interesting
things,
that yeah, because I was just thinking that
people,
I know we saw that we went over this quote before, but in light of today's climate here in America, where people fighting for civil rights
Yeah.
or civil disobedience are being labeled as riots, as opposed to protests.
Yeah. But also, can I just say, um, hey, how are you? I'm an abuse survivor, and I'm sorry, my abuser did not listen to kind words and me trying to explain my position. He listened when I screamed, I shouted, I kicked, I bit, I scratched, I threw stuff back at him. Like, you know, if someone wants to kill you with a gun, they're not gonna listen to you crying and standing in silence. Kaepernick did the silent thing, and people were like, no, that's too far. And that was a very silent thing. And then, like I said, there were other people who did silent protests, and then it just went ignored, or they were just arrested without any plausible justification. So what's that about? And on this slide, we see the the protests taking place, and a
I don't want to
picture from the
interrupt, but it
first.
is very hard to hear. I have no idea if this is our connection or something on your end somehow. I don't want people to miss what you're saying.
I'm not sure I can hear you fine.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, but when you're talking, it's like a bunch of static. But anyway, I guess hopefully it'll clear up.
Hang on, let me. Okay, is it better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay, cool. I'm not
What did
sure
you
why my
do?
headphones. I'm not sure what my headphones was doing, girl.
Okay. Okay, so I can hear you much better. Go ahead, proceed.
Thanks. Okay, so this is a protest that they did. As you can see, police line do not cross. So yeah, that was shortly after the events at Stonewall took place, and then the left hand side we see the first ever big pride event, and on the next slide we see a picture of the one and only Marsha P. Johnson, and basically she led a fascinating life. She was an activist, she was a drag performer, she was a prostitute for nearly 3 decades, and she was an integral part of the Greenwich Village street culture, street life, and she was a central figure in the late 60s, early 70s gay liberation movement, and she modeled for Andy Warhol. She had, unfortunately, her battles with mental illness, and she died at 46 under murky circumstances in 1992. And back then, it was only the queer community who championed her because, obviously, the outsiders did not understand the struggle of a trans black woman having to be a prostitute, so they did not take to her. But after she died, and the internet became available with the records and all, she she and her legacy became far more prevalent and far more revered.
And there is a sorry,
So
life calls. There is a fascinating Marsha P. Johnson. They have the life and history of Marsha P. Johnson on Netflix, but there also is a recent one um, where they are engaging into an investigation, like a cold case investigation, try to figure out what happened to her. It's fascinating if anybody want to check it out. I learned so much about Marsha P. Johnson just by watching that, and throughout the I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but throughout the documentary or however you want to call it, this investigator is calling up her old friends and calling
mhm,
up people who were suspects. Even for some reason, the police officer and the detectives who worked on it was especially rude and did not want to help. But it walks you through her life, and it starts at the beginning of her of a like a big memorial at a bridge. I got the bridge that she that over the I don't know if it was a lake or a body of water where she was found.
yeah.
So kind of, I mean, I'm a girl. Netflix will get you crying in a minute.
Girl, I am rewatching Pose. I spent 2 hours crying today, and I'm just like, okay, no, that's just crazy. And on this picture, we see certain pictures from the New York ballroom scene. So basically, this ballroom scene, as I mentioned, was based on the underground illegal events held by the Queen that we mentioned earlier, and it was and it was like a counterculture phenomenon, and it was basically rooted in necessity violence. Many of queer people are still being kicked out from home, and it was even worse back then. So they found these ran down pubs. They gathered there and they formed these ragtag families, and they started forming their own culture by dancing and singing, and it was mainly black trans women and black gay men and Latino gays and queers. And as you can see, it was a very colorful and very creative space, and they based voguing of African spiritual dances, and they wanted to, smash and mush together the genders as much as possible. They wanted to express that it's an array of colors and that it's not a black or white thing that you're man, female, straight, gay, but it's a spectrum. And that's how voguing came about. As you can see, all these people are looking fierce, looking colorful, and
Okay,
just
they look
it's just
good.
an interestingly colorful part of GRSM history that I just love. And if you want to learn more about this culture done by those who actually lived in this culture, watch Pose. And that's in the middle, that picture on the top row is actually from Pose.
Is it?
And yeah, go back. That picture,
Okay, let me see if I can go back. Uh, is it which? Where is it? This one?
yeah, that in the middle on the top row with the
Oh,
crown.
it sure is. I remember that scene. And it was
That's
they.
Angel.
Yes.
And the actor who plays Angel is actually an XJW, and they got kicked out of home at 15. And I'm calling them by the they them pronouns because they identify as non-binary. So uh, that's India more, and it's
Sorry.
She's crazy talented. And I gathered some of the points of the 20th century about, GRSM history. So basically, in one sentence, fuck Sigmund Freud. In more sentences, you know, this idea of, this religious purity and all that, it led to queer folks being psychoanalyzed and therefore hospitalized, which led to the invention or introduction of conversion therapy, which led and heightened this, sexualization and criminalization of queerness as a moral. And only in the last like 30 to 20 years have we started doing the proper research hand in hand with actual queer people to understand their identities. And 2001 has actually been the first ever time that asexuality has been mentioned in the law, as some you should not be discriminating against, which is, it might sound weird, but it actually happens that asexuals are psychoanalyzed to like the death. Like, it's just your depression. It's just hormones. You're a late bloomer. You're always being analyzed, and that's even more so with other identities, but especially trans identities where you want to transition, where they psychoanalyze the shit out of you before you can even get your hands on the hormones. But luckily, that's being more and more easy to handle with more and more knowledge being available. And here we see the two most commonly known pride flags, which is the second design pride flag and the Philadelphia pride flag that was introduced in 2017, which is a Black Lives Matter pride flag to honor the black and brown people and the black and brown members of the GRSM community, because I guess you should say a word on that because you're I guess more versed in how black culture works in this regard. But I did read about the Philadelphia Pride flag that it was introduced by black activists in Philadelphia because, first of all, the Black Lives Matter movement is obviously a very important cause as well. And secondly, because homophobia is still more prevalent in communities of color, and that's why these activists decided to introduce this flag. And here we see the Black Lives Matter and Pride protests, especially for trans Black lives in 2020, just about a month and a half ago, I think.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble
Because
hearing you.
if you're a black trans person, because if you're a black trans person, actually, I read that your usual lifespan is about 32 years instead of the usual 70 to 80 that any other human being in the so-called Western world has, which is just crazy to me because what reasons would trans for what reason would trans people be dying other than they are being killed? They are being heavily discriminated against, and
and that's just crazy. Like I cannot see a reason why people would be disinvested in what's in someone else's hands. I guess is is why I just don't get. And here is a map representing laws regarding sexual orientation around the world as of 2019. The blue parts are where it's legal to be gay or to get married as a gay person. The orange places are where it's criminalized if you engage in homosexual sex. The red is where it's criminalized to even be homosexual, even if you don't act on it. And the dark red is where you can be put to death if you're a homosexual. And I just think this is a very damning picture that shows how it is absolutely not a choice and that pride parades are still needed. And one of the reasons why is people like Malak Akashev, who was arrested for inciting political unrest for debauchery last year in Egypt. And I guess not many people are versed in Egyptian law, but debauchery is basically like a fake charge they can get you with for being queer. Because they cannot, obviously, because of human rights, you cannot say you're arrested because you're gay or because you're transgendered, but you can be arrested for debauchery, which someone explained what that's supposed to mean. And she's a trans woman. As such, the Egyptian government put her in men's prison because why not? And she was subjected to very invasive medical examinations and possibly sexual abuse by the prison guards and the prison staff, as well as she was, as a woman, locked up with men who fundamentally did not view her as a woman. So she was subjected to all that abuse within the cell as well. And with the help of Amnesty International, after a few months, she got released. And luckily, she to this day is free. Now, here we can see a little chart I made on how to be an ally. And basically, it's a few things. One of them is obviously ask questions. So if you don't understand something, ask questions. Also, I hate to be that asshole who says Google is free, but Google is free. So, don't expect queer people to be your walking lexicons because, say, as much as I know about queer history and as much as I try to be educated on these things, it is not always something that I want to share with just anyone because it's a traumatic thing, coming out, realizing that you're not straight, coming to terms with all the history and all the grand things that are happening, uh, just around the world about queer people. And the Trevor Project is one of the best resources to get help as a queer person if you're homeless, if you're bullied, if you're in doubt about your identity. And and if you're an ally and you want to get educated. So the Travel Project is a very good first first place to start researching if you have questions for queer people and about queer identities, especially if you don't want to constantly ask and nag queer people with questions because of course most of us are very happy to answer questions, but not all the time. So if you want to be a good ally, I think one of the best things you can do is research as well as ask questions. And here we see a snippet from the Travel Project site actually, and it is about suicidality and self-harm and just the mental state of queer youth. As you can see, these statistics are far higher than they should be. But sadly, it's a true reality of it all for us with queer identities. And this show and most of my activism is actually dedicated with humble gratefulness to those who paved this way, who pushed, who protested, who picketed, who picked these fights against medical mistreatments, who stood up to demand an answer for the AIDS epidemic, who we lost to police brutality, abuse, homelessness, and queerphobia, because they should have been more seen, more heard, and without them, we would not be seen and heard. And I like this visual here because sometimes you hear that it's just words on the internet or it's just an opinion, but no, your words matter, and what you say, what you do, what you spout matters. And here we see one of the top examples of why words matter is a remembrance of the GRSM victims of the Holocaust. So the gay people who were lost during the Holocaust and during the war. Here we see various remembrances, and this is Sarah Hegazi, who was a lesbian activist, and she committed suicide due to PTSD caused by imprisonment, also in Egypt, for flaunting the rainbow pride flag, and she managed to flee to Canada, but her mental state was deteriorating due to PTSD, and she took her own life about 2 months ago. And this is the last picture we have of a trans vigil and a remembrance of the Orlando shooting, because as long as one of us is oppressed, none of us are free, and we all deserve justice. We all deserve to be seen, heard, respected, and we all deserve dignity.
Sorry, I was just saying I was on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I was just saying that was the that was even I feel like I know better, know more about this the second time around. I was looking at this slideshow. You
Yeah,
did an awesome job, Molly.
and I have some, specific things that I found other than these things, which is, like I mentioned, uh, Foxing Montfort. Uh, he might be the father of psychoanalysis, allegedly, but he he coined the term bisexual and pansexual, and he defined it as identities based in parental trauma. And he said that all pan and bi people are doing it to to trauma bond, basically. And that idea persisted for a very long time, far into the 1940s and 50s, which is crazy. And asexuality wasn't even something that was considered to be an option until 1977, which which shows that obviously we had a long way to go for these in between identities like demisexuals and pansexuals and asexuals who needed far more understanding than than you could imagine, because obviously it's easy to sweep it under the rug when you kinda sorta don't know them, and when it's not discovered. Asexuality and the understanding of asexuality is so recent that the asexual flag is just 10 years old. You're on mute, Spence. You're on mute, Spence.
Am I on mute this entire time? No, I was gonna say that our audience is saying that they're having trouble hearing us. There is a lot of static in the line. I'm hoping you guys were able to get most of the presentation today. We're gonna have to regroup and perhaps troubleshoot later. I
Oh,
don't know to see what the static is. So I hope you guys were able to get most of that. Um, I don't know. Molly, did you want to close out?
yeah, yeah. So what I want to close this with, I guess, is there's no problem with because some straight cisgendered people seem to think that just because we have pride, we have a problem with straightness or with being with other identities that are not clear. No, no, that's okay. But us having Pride Month to commemorate and celebrate those activists who inspire us and who paved the way for us does not make up for the oppression that we still face. That people still are scared to do and come out of the closet, and that people still
people still can be put to death in certain countries. And I guess that is the most important takeaway that we have to learn is that these identities are still human, and no one should be making a joke of this. Like when you see, say, me and my gay best friend, we crack a lot of, obviously, we crack a lot of jokes about our queer identities. When you see us doing that, that's to queer people. We share this baggage and history. A cisgendered straight person does not. A cisgendered straight person won't be welcome to joke like that because that's punching down. And and I would never crack a joke at, for example, trans people because they are obviously at a big, big disadvantage when it compares to me and my options, especially in my country, that transitioning is not legal. So I guess the most important thing is to educate yourself, questions, and respect the boundaries of queer people if you want to, interact with them and listen to them. And that's my policy with any other minority too, is that if they say this and this does not work, I will definitely believe them because obviously they experience sad thing. And that's true for not just queer people, it's true for people of color, it's true for women, it's true for men, it's true for, yeah, it's just true for the human experience. Listen to one another is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Right. I caught the mute button this time. All right. Well, you guys, if you notice, we're on a different day. I hope you can hear us through the static, but I hope we're on a different day. We are gonna do Duncan religion on Wednesdays now, right? We're working on the time, and then I guess next week we actually Molly has got together a lot of topics. You girl, you've been having all those topics that you got lined up. So we'll
Yeah,
probably choose a topic for next week, and then we'll let you guys know in advance, and then we'll work out the
girl,
sound
I told
issues.
you.
You
Girl,
said
I
you.
told you, quarantine has me going.
All right. Well, I personally don't have any closing thoughts. I thought that again, as Molly said, I did catch the last thing Molly said, which was that we should listen to people, minorities, people who are marginalized, and so I was just thinking
You froze, Spence.